This audiobook will rewire the way you think about money, because wealth is not reserved for the lucky, the gifted, or the chosen few. It is reserved for those who understand the code. You've been told to work harder, to follow the rules, to wait your turn, to save, invest, retire. But what if the rules you've been following were designed to keep you stuck? What if everything you believed about money, how it's made, how it's held, and who deserves it, wasn't a truth, but a story? This book isn't just about financial strategy, it's about financial identity. It's about uncovering the subconscious patterns that keep you small and activating the internal systems that allow you to build, grow, and sustain real wealth on your terms. Inside these chapters, you won't find shallow advice. You'll find hard truths, bold principles, and a blueprint designed to elevate your earning, expand your time, and transform your relationship with value itself. Wherever you are in your journey, starting from nothing, rebuilding after loss, or scaling to your next level, this audiobook is your mirror, your challenge, and your permission. Permission to stop chasing, permission to start owning, permission to become the kind of person who doesn't just make money, but holds it, multiplies it, and leads with it. This is the hidden code of wealth. Now take a breath, get still, and let the code begin to unlock. Chapter 1. A lock you never knew existed. Before a door can be opened, there must be a lock, and before a lock can be opened, there must be a key. But what if the lock was invisible? What if it was so well hidden, so seamlessly integrated into the walls of your upbringing, your education, your culture, that you never even realized it was there? Most people spend their entire lives pacing outside a door they didn't know they could open. They see wealth as something for others, something gated, something mythical, something out of reach. But here's the first truth. Wealth is not a mystery. It's a system. It's coded, and it's learnable. The problem isn't that the code doesn't exist. The problem is that you were never shown the cipher. Not by your parents, not by your teachers, and certainly not by the institutions that profit from your confusion. Imagine for a moment that you are born into a house filled with locked doors. Every door has a number on it. Some say 5 figures. Some say 6, some say 7, and beyond the last hallway, 8. You hear stories about people who walk freely through those doors. Maybe you see them in your neighborhood. More likely, you see them on your screen. They live differently. They move differently. And though no one says it aloud, they seem to play by rules you were never handed. So you do what everyone else does. You knock, you beg, you wait. You study, you hope, you assume that someday someone will walk down the hallway and hand you a key. But what if the key isn't handed to you? What if the key is built slowly by unlearning everything that made you think you weren't allowed in the first place? The truth is brutal. The real barrier to wealth is not class. It's not IQ. It's not credentials. It's belief. Not belief in yourself in the self-help sense, but belief in the structure of money. If you grew up around financial fear, you absorbed a kind of nervous system pattern, a subconscious rejection of abundance. You learn to hoard, not to build. You learn to obey, not to create. You learn to wait, not to act. And without knowing it, you internalize the most dangerous belief of all, that wealth is for them, not you. But wealth is not a club. It's a code. And codes don't discriminate. They simply require input. Here's the secret no one tells you. Wealthy people are not necessarily smarter than you. They're not more moral. They're not more deserving. In fact, many of them are less intelligent than you, less organized than you, and far less ethical than you. The difference is, they were either taught the code, or they stumbled upon it. But either way, they learned one fundamental truth early. Money doesn't follow effort. Money follows value. And value is perception. This is where the lock hides. Because if you believe money is only earned by labor, hard, grinding labor, you will always be capped. Always. Why? Because your body can only give so much. There are only so many hours. And time is not scalable, but perception is. Let's slow that down. Your time is not scalable. Your value is. You can't add more hours to your day, but you can multiply what an hour is worth. That's the essence of leverage. That's the beginning of unlocking the hidden code. And it starts with a brutal self-inventory. How much of your identity is wrapped up in effort, rather than output? Were you taught to admire those who work the hardest? Were you rewarded for long hours instead of smart results? Were you told that wanting more was greedy, or that ambition made you arrogant? All of these are bricks in the wall that hides the lock. Wealth begins when you stop playing by the rules of those who profit from your obedience. And make no mistake, obedience is profitable. The school system is designed to create employees, not ozons. The job market is structured to reward predictability, not innovation. And the financial system is built to keep you borrowing, paying interest, and chasing small carrots for decades. But owners don't chase carrots, they plant orchards. And that shift from consumer to creator, from laborer to leverage, is where the lock begins to loosen. There's another layer to the code, one most people never hear. It's not just about how you earn, it's about what you believe you deserve. If deep down you carry shame around money, if you feel guilt for wanting more, or embarrassment when you have it, you will unconsciously sabotage every gain. The code does not operate on logic alone. It is powered by emotion. Your relationship with money is a mirror. It reflects your unresolved stories, your beliefs about safety, worth, identity, even love. Until those are examined, no financial strategy will stick. You might get a raise, you might start a business, but the thermostat will pull you back down. This is why lottery winners go broke, why athletes with million-dollar contracts file for bankruptcy, why kids from humble beginnings who strike gold often crash before the second act, because the lock was never removed. It was just temporarily bypassed, and eventually the door slams shut again. But it doesn't have to. To decode wealth, you must first see it as it truly is, a layered structure, with psychological roots and strategic branches. It is not built in sprints. It is architected in awareness. That awareness begins here, by asking yourself questions most people never dare to consider. What was I taught about money? Not in words, but in tone, in fear, in silence. Whose financial behaviors did I model, and are they free? Do I truly believe I am allowed to be wealthy, or do I secretly expect to struggle forever? These questions are not academic, they are foundational. Until you answer them with brutal honesty, every budget, every hustle, every financial plan will be built on unstable ground. So we begin with this. Wealth is not an outcome, it is a structure, and that structure is built, not stumbled into. The wealthy are not lucky, they are not chosen, they are not part of some untouchable circle. They are simply people who by teaching, trial or trauma saw the code, and once they saw it, they never looked away. You must now decide, do you want to keep knocking on the door, or are you ready to pick up the tools and carve the key? This book is not about hype. It's not about getting rich quick. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about seeing the structure behind the show. It's about learning to think like wealth thinks, to behave like value behaves, and to rise above the fog of noise, poverty mindsets, and inherited fear. Every chapter will reveal a piece of the code, a segment of the pattern. Some will be psychological, some will be practical, but all of it will be real. You don't need another guru, you need a blueprint. And that starts here, by locating the invisible lock that's kept you outside, and realizing it was never on the door, it was on your mind. Chapter 2. The programming beneath your paycheck. There is a reason why two people can make the same amount of money and end up in completely different financial realities. One is always broke. The other quietly builds an empire. One lives paycheck to paycheck. The other moves pieces behind the curtain, watching wealth compound in silence. Same income, same opportunities, but very different outcomes. Why? Because money is never just about money. It's about programming. Deep subconscious, inherited programming. And until you examine that programming, the paycheck doesn't matter. You are not born with beliefs about money. You are programmed. From the moment you begin observing the world, your mind starts recording patterns. You see how your parents handle bills. You hear how they talk about rich people. You notice how often they fight about expenses, or avoid the topic entirely. You absorb everything, not through lessons, but through energy, through emotion, through repetition. If your childhood was filled with phrases like "we can't afford that," or "money doesn't grow on trees," or "rich people are greedy," those words didn't just pass through your ears. They got written into your operating system. These phrases don't just describe reality, they create it. They form the mental boundaries you operate within for the rest of your life. Let's be brutally honest. The paycheck you earn today is not just a function of your skills or education. It is a direct reflection of what you've been conditioned to accept. Somewhere along the way you learned what your labor was worth, and whether you know it or not, you've been negotiating from that script ever since. Not the script you speak, the one that lives under your skin, the one that tenses up when you ask for a raise, the one that whispers, "You should be grateful," the one that flinches when you try to raise your prices, the one that panics when money starts to grow, because growth feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. This is the trap, and it's invisible, which makes it all the more dangerous. Here's what the wealthy understand. Income is not a ceiling, it's a projection. It's a mirror of how you've been taught to value your own contribution. And for most people, that projection is distorted by decades of financial trauma. Financial trauma doesn't always look like bankruptcy. It doesn't always come from poverty. It can come from living in a household where success was envied, where self-worth was attached to frugality, where ambition was mocked, where you were told money changes people, and the message underneath was don't change, don't rise, don't outgrow us. So you did. Instead, you stayed safe. You chose jobs that looked responsible. You kept your head down. You didn't ask for too much. And if you got a little ahead, you found a way to lose it, through bad decisions, generosity or sabotage, because some part of you believed that too much money was dangerous, that it would isolate you, that it would make people judge you, that it would prove you were no longer one of them. This programming is deep, and it's powerful, but it's not permanent. It can be rewritten. Let's talk about your paycheck. Your paycheck is not the truth. It's not a verdict on your value. It's the result of an agreement, one that you probably didn't even know you signed. You agreed to trade time for money. You agreed to play by the rules. You agreed to cap your earning potential in exchange for predictability. And you agreed to stop questioning that agreement, because questioning it might lead to discomfort, or risk, or rejection. But what if that agreement is no longer serving you? What if the rules you've been following were written by people who never escaped the system? What if your ceiling is made of stories, not fact? The first step in rewriting your programming is awareness. And awareness comes from asking hard questions. Not just how much do I earn, but why am I comfortable earning this amount? Who told me this was enough? What would it mean to want more? And most importantly, what parts of myself would I have to confront if I decided I was worth more? Long before the external shift happens, the internal one must begin. When you see wealthy individuals, don't just look at their lifestyles, look at their programming. What do they believe they're entitled to? What risks are they willing to take? What do they believe about time, money, and value? Most importantly, how do they respond to setbacks? Because the wealthy do not avoid failure. They are simply not programmed to fear it the way most people are. Most people equate failure with identity. To fail means I am a failure. To lose money means I am reckless. To take a risk means I'm being irresponsible. These are the kinds of mental associations that sabotage income before it ever grows. Wealthy programming separates outcome from identity. You can fail at a project and still believe in your worth. You can lose money and still trust your instincts. You can take a risk and still see yourself as grounded. This emotional stability is not just confidence, it's wiring, and it's programmable. Let's go deep. Your paycheck is a container. It holds the energy, the beliefs, the permissions, and the limitations you've accepted. If you want a new container, you must outgrow the old one, and outgrowing starts by questioning. Do you believe you have to earn rest? Do you feel guilty when money comes easily? Do you downplay your wins because others are struggling? Do you fear raising your prices because someone might say no? If so, that's not humility, that's programming, and it's costing you more than you know. Money flows to certainty. It flows to people who are anchored in their value, not because they're loud, but because they're clear. And clarity comes from doing the work of detangling your financial identity from your inherited beliefs. Your parents did the best they could. Your teachers taught you what they knew. But you are not required to carry their limitations any further. This is your turn to write a new code. One where money is not guilt. One where growth is not betrayal. One where value is not tied to exhaustion. And one where the paycheck is not a verdict but a choice. In the next chapter, we'll begin unlocking that choice by decoding how money communicates. Because here's the truth. Money is not silent. It speaks, but only to those who've learned to listen. Chapter 3. Wealth is not a number, it's a language. Money speaks, not in words, not in whispers, but in patterns, in behaviors, in movements, in signals that most people are never trained to recognize. The illusion is that money is math, all logic, all numbers, all cold precision. But wealth, in its true form, behaves more like language. It has tone, it has context, it has rhythm, and like any language, if you don't learn how to read it, you'll forever be misinterpreting what it's trying to tell you. Most people listen to money with deaf ears. They only see the surface, bank balances, interest rates, prices, paycheck. They chase the digits, not realizing that those digits are only the subtitles to a much deeper message. True wealth doesn't live in your wallet, it lives in your decisions, and your decisions are shaped by how fluently you understand the signals money sends. Let's begin with the obvious. If money was just about math, we'd all be wealthy. We all understand addition and subtraction. We know how to budget. We can use a calculator. But wealth is not about knowing what to do. It's about knowing what to notice. It's the same difference between reading a foreign menu versus understanding a culture. A tourist can read the ingredients, but a local knows what the dish means, when it's served, who makes it best, what memories it triggers. That's the difference between financial literacy and wealth fluency. Wealth fluency means you don't just see money, you read the meaning behind it, the timing, the intent, the opportunity, the risk, the asymmetry, and that level of awareness, like language fluency, only comes through exposure, immersion, and deliberate practice. Here's where most people get stuck. They treat every financial decision as binary: spend or save, invest or don't, earn or wait. But money is not binary, it's layered, and it speaks differently depending on who you are, where you are, and how you listen. To the untrained mind, $10,000 is a stroke of luck. To the fluent mind, it's a seed, and every seed has a climate, a soil, a cycle. If you plant it in fear, it dies. If you plant it with intention, it multiplies. This is why wealth behaves like language, because context matters more than content. Let's look at how money actually speaks. Money speaks through motion. It reveals where attention is flowing, where trust is being placed, where fear is spreading. When a stock price drops, most people only see loss. The fluent ear hears movement. Why are people pulling out? What story are they believing? What narrative are they betting against? Is this fear justified, or is it exaggerated? This same principle applies in every corner of finance: real estate, crypto, startups, commodities. Wealthy individuals don't just chase price, they chase storylines. And to hear those storylines, you need to understand the grammar of capital. What is that grammar? Money has verbs: invest, spend, save, borrow, lend, compound. It has adjectives: risky, passive, liquid, fixed, scalable. It has tone. Desperation drives one kind of transaction, confidence drives another, greed colors deals in a different light than generosity, and fear changes the entire dialect. If you don't learn the tone behind the transaction, you'll always be reacting, never leading. Now let's take a practical turn. Look at your own financial behavior, not just the dollars, the decisions. What patterns do you follow? What habits do you obey without question? What emotions rise up when money moves in or out of your life? These behaviors form your financial vocabulary, and like a language learner stuck on basic phrases, many people operate at a surface level with money, enough to survive, never enough to express freedom. Wealth fluency expands your vocabulary. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" you begin to ask, "What will this return over time?" Instead of asking, "How much does this cost?" you ask, "What does this unlock?" Instead of saying, "That's expensive," you say, "That's outside my current strategy." Language shapes perspective, and perspective shapes power. That's why wealthy people seem to think in different dimensions, because they do. Here's the shift that happens when you learn to hear the language of wealth. You stop seeing money as the goal. You start seeing it as a medium, a means, a messenger, a multiplier. And that's where true power begins. Now let's dive into a powerful example: opportunity cost. If you've taken a basic economics class, You've heard the term, but most people never internalize what it really means. Opportunity cost is the hidden cost of every choice. It's the value of what you didn't do, the investment you didn't make, the call you didn't take, the book you didn't read. The untrained ear hears, I saved $50 by not going out. The fluent ear hears, what did I lose by playing small? What connection wasn't made? What idea wasn't sparked? What value wasn't created? When you become fluent in wealth's language, you stop asking only what things cost. You start asking what they prevent, what they delay, what they deny, and what they create in your timeline. This shift alone can double your financial intelligence. Another crucial pattern to recognize: money doesn't like stagnation. It wants to move, to grow, to flow. If money sits too long, unused, unloved, unallocated, it rots. Inflation eats it, fear hoards it, entropy drains it. That's why the wealthy are constantly allocating, not just spending, deploy. They understand that idle money is like idle energy. It degrades over time, so they learn to give it a job. Some money is assigned to growth, some to defense, some to leverage, some to learning, but none of it is left without purpose. If your money doesn't have direction, it will drift, and drifting money becomes disappearing money. Now let's talk about another core principle: compounding. Everyone hears about it. Few truly feel it, because compounding is a patient language. It speaks quietly at first. It sounds like silence, but then it roars. The first year, barely noticeable. The third, modest. The seventh, impressive. The 15th, violent. The 20th, reality-altering. But to reach the roar you must survive the whisper, and that requires faith. Not blind optimism but trained literacy. You must know what it's saying, even when others think nothing is happening. This applies not just to capital, but to skill, to brand, to network, to reputation. All wealth compounds, but only in the presence of consistent attention. The language of wealth rewards those who stay in the conversation longest. Let's land this chapter with a personal challenge. For the next 7 days, track your financial thoughts, not just your spending. Write down every moment you feel scarcity, every time you hesitate, every time you justify a small decision that contradicts your bigger vision. Ask yourself, what is my financial language? Am I speaking survival or speaking growth? Am I communicating fear or clarity? Am I whispering limitation or broadcasting vision? The way you speak about money, to others, and especially to yourself, is a direct reflection of how much you're prepared to receive. Money listens, but more importantly, it echoes. What you project is what comes back. Learn to speak its language fluently, and it will begin to answer. Chapter 4: The Invisible Habits of the Wealthy. Wealth is rarely loud. It doesn't shout in luxury cars or scream in designer shoes. Real wealth, enduring, strategic, compounding wealth, is quiet, subtle, invisible to the untrained eye. You walk past it on the street without noticing. You shake its hand at the airport. You sit beside it at cafes, and all the while it's building, it's working, it's growing, not through sudden windfalls, but through deeply wired habits that operate silently beneath the surface of everyday life. These habits are not flashy, they are not dramatic, they don't make headlines, but they build empires. And the most powerful part, they are learnable. Let's start with the most misunderstood habit of the wealthy: attention allocation. Wealthy people do not just manage their money, they manage their attention, ruthlessly. They don't spend their mental energy chasing every trend, reading every headline, reacting to every market blip. Their focus is curated, their attention is intentional. They understand that attention is a currency, and if you waste it on distraction, you bankrupt your clarity. Without clarity, you make poor decisions, and poor decisions bleed wealth. Every morning, the average person wakes up and checks their phone, news, social media, messages. They hand their focus to the world before they've even asked what their own priorities are. But the wealthy guard that window of attention. They begin the day with intention, not reaction, because how you start your day shapes how you think, and how you think shapes what you earn. The habit is not wake up early. The habit is own your mind before the world rents it. That's a habit of wealth. Another invisible habit: delayed emotion in decision-making. The wealthy do not make financial moves in emotional storms. They do not sell in panic. They do not buy in euphoria. They do not negotiate from desperation. They allow a cooling period, a buffer between stimulus and response, because they know emotion clouds logic, and in money, a single emotional decision can cost years. So they train themselves to wait, to breathe, to pause. The delay is not weakness, it's discipline, and it saves them from ruin more often than any spreadsheet ever could. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a money decision while angry, or afraid, or excited, and what did it cost you? Wealth is protected not just by knowledge, but by emotional restraint. That restraint is a learned habit, and it's invisible until it saves you. Next is information filtering. Wealthy people consume information differently. They are not overloaded by noise. They do not treat all sources equally. They do not confuse volume with value. Instead, they filter. They prioritize first-hand experience, data over gossip, patterns over anecdotes. They know that the majority of the financial world is built to sell emotion, not accuracy. So they ask, who wrote this? What are they selling? What incentives are hidden? Is this signal or noise? This habit protects their mindset, and their mindset protects their capital. While most people scroll for entertainment, the wealthy read for insight. While most chase trends, the wealthy build frameworks. While most react to news, the wealthy position themselves before it breaks. This is not intelligence, it's discipline, and it's practiced daily. Another invisible habit: feedback loops. The wealthy track everything, not obsessively, strategically. They don't just guess how they're doing, they measure, they analyze, they review, not just income, but decisions, not just wins, but mistakes, not just performance, but patterns. This habit creates self-awareness, and self-awareness reduces repeat errors, because in money the costliest mistake is not the first, it's the second. The wealthy know this, so they reflect, they debrief, they don't wait for disaster to learn, they extract lessons early, while the damage is small. What do you track in your financial life? Is it just expenses? Or do you track opportunity cost, regret analysis, time spent in your zone of genius? The habit is not about data, it's about direction, and direction is everything when wealth compounds over decades. Let's look at environment design, perhaps the most underestimated wealth habit of all. Wealthy people shape their surroundings to support their goals. They don't just rely on willpower, they engineer default success. They curate the people they speak to. They choose mentors with precision. They avoid environments that reward impulsive behavior. They build homes, routines, workspaces, all to reduce friction between themselves and the life they want to lead. This habit is silent. You rarely notice someone's environment until you see the results. But behind every high-functioning wealth builder is an environment that makes winning easy and losing hard. You can apply this right now. Look around. Does your space trigger ambition or complacency? Do your habits live in chaos or clarity? Does your environment pull you into growth or push you into comfort? The invisible habits begin here, not in the numbers but in the surroundings that shape the numbers. Now let's address the core behavioral shift that all wealthy people make, and few talk about: switching from consumer to creator. This isn't just about business, it's about identity. Wealthy people are creators of value always. They enter conversations thinking, how can I serve? They look at markets and ask, what's missing? They approach time asking, what can I build with this hour? They don't just spend, they convert. They don't just earn, they scale. The consumer mentality says, how much can I get for this? The creator mentality says, how much can I generate from this? This habit rewires everything. How you use time, how you assess relationships, how you approach risk, how you define success. You stop measuring income as a paycheck. You start measuring it as a product of your creativity, your positioning, your strategic generosity. And that's when money stops being a chase and starts being a response. Finally, one of the most powerful invisible habits of the wealthy: investing in silence. Not just financial silence, mental silence, white space, unscheduled hours, uninterrupted thinking. The wealthy make room for boredom because they know innovation is born there. They block time to think, not just do. They protect space for clarity, not just hustle, and in that stillness, they hear what others miss. This habit doesn't look productive, but it multiplies every productive action that follows, because in silence, strategy sharpens, and when strategy sharpens, wealth accelerates. So what do all these invisible habits have in common? They operate beneath visibility. They're not shared in public wins. They're not taught in school, but they shape everything. The wealthy are not always who you think they are. They don't always have the biggest house, or the loudest brand, or the flashiest life. But what they do have is structure, discipline, and a set of internal rules that compound day after day, whether or not anyone is watching. These habits are not genetic, they're not divine. They're built through repetition, through choices, through uncomfortable self-honesty. And if you build them, they will do what they've always done: protect you, elevate you, and over time, free you. In the next chapter, we move from the internal to the external, unlocking how the assets you choose reveal more than you think, because not all wealth-building tools are equal. Some whisper, some shout, some multiply silently in the background while others distract you with noise. Chapter 5. Assets that talk, and what they say. Money may be silent, but assets speak, and those who know how to listen, truly listen, can hear what the world's wealthiest individuals have known for centuries. Assets have voices. They tell stories, they reveal intentions, and they quietly shape the future of those who own them. But most people never hear them. Not because the assets aren't speaking, but because most people are too busy chasing income to realize that income is only one chapter in the entire wealth story. The real story, the one that compounds, that scales, that frees you, begins with what you own, not what you earn. Let's be clear. If you're trading time for money, you are renting your life. You are paid only when you show up. You are rewarded only when you obey the script. And you are trapped in a structure where your potential is always capped by your availability. But assets don't clock out. They don't sleep. They don't get tired. And they don't care whether you're in the mood or not. They work, quietly, constantly. That's the power of ownership. That's the first whisper an asset makes. I don't need you to trade time for me. I multiply without your presence. Compare this to a paycheck. A salary may look secure, it may feel predictable, but it is a leash. The moment you stop showing up, it stops showing up too. Assets, on the other hand, are scalable time machines. They allow you to stretch value beyond your physical reach. They let your past decisions echo into the future. But not all assets are created equal, and not all assets speak the same language. Some whisper gently over time, compounding, appreciating, building quietly in the background. Others scream for attention, full of volatility, adrenaline and risk. Some are deceptive. They look like assets but drain like liabilities. Others are invisible, undervalued, mispriced, until someone with trained ears hears their true voice. The wealthy don't just collect assets. They interpret them. They know which ones to trust. And let's explore what some of the major asset classes say, and how to listen. Real estate says, I will reward your patience, punish your neglect, and mirror your vision. A property is never just a building, it's a statement of leverage, of vision, of timing. Real estate whispers long-term, it speaks in cycles, it doesn't react to your emotions, it rewards structure, planning and time. The wealthy know this. They don't buy based on fads. They buy based on fundamentals, location, demand, cash flow, exit potential. They don't overextend. They don't speculate blindly. They listen to what the market is really saying. Most importantly, they understand the hidden layer, that real estate is not just about appreciation, it's about control. When you own a property, you own leverage. You own optionality. You own a piece of land that isn't printing more of itself. Now contrast that with consumption. When you spend money on things that lose value the moment you swipe the card, the asset is talking, but it's not saying what you think. It's saying, I will fade, I will decline, I will leave you with nothing but the memory of ownership. Now listen to equity. Equity says, I will multiply your insight, or magnify your ignorance. Equity, in businesses, in startups, in shares, is a multiplier. but it is also a magnifier. If you choose correctly, it can transform small capital into generational wealth. If you choose poorly, it will vaporize value faster than you can react. The wealthy approach equity not as a lottery ticket, but as a strategy. They look at leadership, they study market trends, they analyze business models. They don't just ask, will this grow? They ask, how is this structured to grow and what role can I play? Because in equity your involvement matters. Active investors create leverage. Passive investors observe patterns. Blind investors get punished. Equity isn't just a bet, it's a relationship. And like any relationship, it reveals your psychology more than your spreadsheets. Now consider intellectual property. IP says, I work forever if you protect me. Books, courses, patents, code, content. These are modern-age assets that require no warehouse, no inventory and no ongoing physical labor, yet they can produce income for years, even decades. The problem? Most people never see them as assets. They see them as side projects, hobbies, experiments. But the wealthy see differently. They understand that one well-designed asset can outperform years of labor. One online course, one licensing deal, one viral video, one book with royalties. All of these, when executed with precision, become financial instruments. IP is the soft-spoken genius of wealth, quiet, durable, scalable. It speaks only to those who take the time to build it. Then we have cash-flowing assets, businesses, dividend-paying stock, rental income, royalties. These assets say, I will pay you regularly if you treat me like a partner, not a machine. They require upkeep, they require systems, they require attention, but they reward you with consistency. And in a world driven by unpredictability, consistency is power. Cash flow is the voice of financial freedom. It tells you you don't need to hustle forever. You can live off the momentum of smart decisions. And once you experience that voice, even in small doses, you'll never want to go back. But there's one more type of asset that almost no one talks about: your name, your reputation, your digital footprint, your social capital. It doesn't show up on a balance sheet, but it opens doors, unlocks capital, and reduces friction in ways that money never can. Your name is either appreciating or depreciating, with every post, with every client, with every introduction. Are you listening to what it says? Is it building trust, or trading attention for cheap engagement? Is it signaling value or broadcasting noise? Reputation is the ultimate quiet asset, because once it compounds, money starts chasing you. Now here's the hard truth. Most people don't own assets. They accumulate liabilities disguised as assets. They buy cars thinking they're investments. They chase status symbols thinking they're leverage. They max out cards for products that rot in drawers. They pay subscriptions that deliver no return. They accumulate things, not value. But here's the good news. You don't need millions to build your asset base. You need awareness. You need intention. You need a lens that asks with every dollar, am I owning or am I spending? Wealth is not about having more. It's about building machines that work harder than you do. And those machines begin with the decision to stop chasing income and start accumulating ownership. Let's summarize what assets are really saying. Real estate says, think long, plan well, hold firm. Equity says, multiply wisely or bleed quickly. Intellectual property says, build once, get paid forever. Cash-flowing assets say, buy your freedom one system at a time. Your reputation says, signal value and watch the doors open. And fake assets, the ones sold to you through ads, peer pressure and emotional spending, they say only one thing: I own you. You choose who speaks into your future. You choose which voices you allow to echo into your timeline. Wealthy people are not just asset rich, they are asset literate. They know how to listen, and that listening becomes strategy. That strategy becomes power, and that power, over time, becomes legacy. In the next chapter we move deeper into mindset, because one of the most dangerous illusions in wealth building is security. You've been sold a lie, a comforting one, but a lie nonetheless. Chapter 6: The Lie of Security. There is no word more comforting and more dangerous in the modern economy than the word security. Job security, financial security. These terms are spoken like promises, like guarantees handed down by systems that are older than most of us can remember. But here's the truth. a truth few are willing to confront. Most of what you call security is not security at all. It's dependence, and dependence is just a prettier word for vulnerability. Let's start with the most common illusion: job security. The promise is simple: work hard, be loyal, show up, get paid, climb the ladder, retire with dignity. It's the model sold by corporations, reinforced by schools, and deeply embedded in middle-class culture. But reality is less romantic. Companies restructure, industries collapse, managers change, algorithms replace roles, entire careers vanish, not because of failure, but because of evolution. Job security is not real, it's rented, and the lease can be terminated with 30 days notice or less. The illusion persists because it feels safer than uncertainty, because a steady paycheck feels like control. But what it actually creates is fragility, the kind of fragility that leaves families in ruin when one paycheck disappears. Wealthy individuals learn early: security is not a salary, security is ownership, it's leverage, it's diversification, it's control over time, not obedience to someone else's calendar. Now let's confront another seductive phrase: financial security. It sounds noble, responsible, adult. We're told to save for a rainy day, build an emergency fund, contribute to retirement, avoid risk. None of that is wrong, but it's incomplete, because financial security without financial growth is stagnation with a mask. It's the belief that if you just huddle tightly enough, you'll be protected from the storm. But storms come, markets shift, inflation eats your savings in silence, emergencies pile on each other, and eventually the wall cracks. Because fear-based security has no offensive game, it only defends, and defense alone never builds freedom. The wealthy don't chase security, they build stability, and that's different. Stability is not about eliminating risk, it's about managing it, structuring around it, making risk work for you. Consider this: the greatest entrepreneurs in history were not risk takers in the way people imagine. They were risk designers. They built systems where the downside was capped, but the upside was uncapped. That's not gambling, that's strategy. They didn't seek safety, they created asymmetric advantage. And that's where true security comes from, not from hiding, but from controlling the levers that others fear to touch. You've been taught that the safest route is the most responsible, but let's be honest. How many people do you know who played it safe their whole life, and still ended up stressed, broke, or dependent? Safety is not the same as freedom. Safety is staying in the boat. Freedom is building the ship. Now let's talk about retirement security, perhaps the most outdated concept, still circulating as gospel. The idea that you'll work for 40 years, retire at 65, and live comfortably until death was designed for a world that no longer exists. Pensions have disappeared, healthcare costs are rising, life expectancy is increasing, and the cost of living is inflating faster than most retirement accounts can keep up with. You are not meant to retire from life, you're meant to graduate into ownership. Wealthy people don't wait to retire, they exit dependence as early as possible, because retirement for them isn't an age, it's a number. A moment where your assets produce enough to replace your labor, a moment where you work by choice, not by requirement, and that shift can happen at 65 or at 35. It depends not on your employer, but on your understanding of leverage. Here's the core deception behind the security myth. It assumes that the world stays stable, that systems don't change, that companies don't fold, that currencies don't lose value, that governments always act in your best interest. But systems are fragile, markets are dynamic, institutions are reactive, and the only real hedge against chaos is adaptability. Adaptability comes from ownership, and ownership comes from rejecting the fantasy of permanent safety. Let's be blunt, security is a marketing tool. It's used to sell products, policies, careers, and ideologies, and it works because it taps into the most primal emotion we have: fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being left behind. But fear-based decisions are expensive. They cost time, they cost peace, they cost potential, and worst of all, they cost control. So what's the alternative? not recklessness, not blind ambition, but structured freedom, the kind of freedom that comes from systems, not superstitions, the kind of freedom built on income streams, not single check, on assets, not appearances, on agility, not permission. Security is not about being untouchable, it's about being unshakable, and you don't get unshakable by hoarding, you get unshakable by building. Think about your current life. Where are you renting security from someone else's structure? Where are you trusting an external system that could collapse tomorrow? Where are you telling yourself you're safe when you're actually stuck? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are the beginning of truth, and truth, unlike comfort, compounds. Wealth doesn't chase security, it creates resilience, the kind of resilience that allows you to pivot, to adapt, to rebuild if necessary, to walk away if needed, because you're not owned, because you're not trapped, because you designed your world to hold you, not to cage you. The moment you stop chasing the illusion of security and start constructing a framework of sovereignty, everything changes. You stop making fear-based trades. You stop asking for permission. You stop outsourcing your safety to people who barely know your name. And you start walking differently, thinking differently, living differently. The next time someone offers you security, look deeper. Are they offering you safety or silence? Are they giving you support or submission? Are they protecting you or positioning themselves above you? Because real wealth is not sheltered, it's strategic. And strategy begins with asking, if this system failed tomorrow, would I still be standing? If the answer is no, you're not secure, you're exposed. Chapter 7. Time. The only wealth you can't earn back. There is one currency no investor, no entrepreneur, no empire, no matter how powerful, can manufacture more of. Time. It is the most democratic resource on earth. Everyone, rich or poor, begins each day with the same 24 hours. And yet how that time is spent determines everything, from your bank account to your mental peace, your health, your freedom, and your legacy. Time is the most valuable form of wealth, not because it can be stored, but because it can't. It flows, constantly, silently, without asking your permission. And every day you delay building your life with intention, time collects interest, not in dollars lost, but in experiences missed, in compounding regret, in untapped momentum, in vanishing windows that may never reopen. You've been told that wealth is measured in dollars, but that's only part of the truth. True wealth is measured in how you use time, not just how much of it you have, but how much of it you own. A person working 70 hours a week with no control over their schedule may look rich, but they are time poor. And a person making less, yet choosing when, where, and how they work, may quietly be far wealthier. Because time is not just about freedom, it's about power, the power to rest, to build, to recover, to create, to choose. And make no mistake, every financial decision you make is either buying back time or stealing it from your future. Let's get practical. Every dollar you earn has a time cost. How many hours did it take to get it? How much of your energy was consumed in exchange? Was the time spent building something that will return later, or was it simply burned? The wealthy understand that time is the real denominator, not dollars, not effort, not even opportunity. Time is the one variable that once spent, never returns. So they begin to ask a new Kinnan, how can I make this hour worth more? How can I separate my income from my physical presence? How can I multiply time without cloning myself? This is where leverage comes in. Leverage is the great time expander. It is how one person's idea, effort, or system can generate results at scale, with or without their continued involvement. When you build systems, write code, train teams, publish content, license property, or invest in assets that compound, you are no longer trading time for money. You are investing time for freedom. That's the shift, from spending time to investing it. And the returns are not just financial, they're psychological, they're emotional, they're spiritual, they touch every layer of your life. Because when you reclaim your time, you reclaim yourself. So why do so many people waste time like it's nothing? Because they've been taught that time is less valuable than money. They'll guard their wallet, but give away hours. They'll drive 45 minutes to save $5. They'll spend weekends on work they hate, just to keep a title. They'll say yes to distractions, favors, and obligations that drain them, Because no one ever taught them that time boundaries are wealth boundaries. The wealthy learn to say no, not because they're arrogant, but because they understand the math. Every yes to the wrong thing is a no to something more aligned. Every hour you spend tolerating is an hour you didn't invest in building. Let's go deeper. Time is not just a resource, it's a mirror. It reflects what you value, what you believe, and what you fear. How you use your time reveals your internal programming. Are you reacting or creating? Are you numbing or building? Are you performing for approval or progressing by design? Look at your calendar. Look at your screen time. Look at how you start your mornings. Look at what you prioritize when no one is watching. Those patterns are not just habits. They are investments, and like any investment, they yield return or loss. Here's what most people never understand. The compound interest of time is more powerful than the compound interest of money. Why? Because when you use time well, money follows. But when you misuse time, no amount of money can save you. Wealthy people obsess over time management, not because they want to be productive machines, but because they understand time is their most expensive employee. Every hour misallocated is a silent liability. Every hour optimized is an appreciating asset. It's not about working more. It's about working on the right things, at the right time, for the right reason. And that clarity, that's a product of vision. You don't manage time well by accident. You do it by knowing what you're building. So let's ask a difficult question. What is your time currently building? Is it a career that serves your future? Is it a business that will run without you? Is it a body that will sustain your energy? Is it a mindset that will protect your peace? Or is it just survival, just coping, just delay? Because you don't get more time later, you just get different consequences. And the ones who ignored this truth always regret it. Time compounds, not just in wealth, but in relationships, in decisions, in alignment, in courage. Let's be specific. If you invest 1 hour a day into a skill, in a year, you've accumulated 36 to 5 hours of mastery. If you waste 1 hour a day scrolling, you've burned 15 full days of your life. If you spend 1 weekend a month in fear, you've lost 3 months of joy per year. Now multiply that over a decade. Time is not a moment, it's a trajectory, and every trajectory has a destination. The wealthy live by that. They reverse engineer outcomes. They design weeks around results, not rituals. They calendar creation, not just reaction. They respect rest, not as laziness, but as strategic energy allocation. They don't manage time like it's a to-do list. They invest it like capital. Here's what you can do right now. Audit your time. Track a single week. Not just meetings and tasks, but attention. Where did it go? What did it create? What did it cost? Then ask, what would a wealthy version of me stop doing? What would they do more of? What would they never tolerate again? This simple practice will expose more financial potential than any spreadsheet ever could, because until you own your time, you don't own your life. And if you don't own your life, someone else will. Let's close with this. You can always make another dollar, but you can never remake an hour. And that truth, when fully accepted, will change how you speak, work, rest, relate, and invest. You don't need more hours. You need more ownership of the hours you already have. You don't need more productivity. You need more clarity on what matters. And when that clarity takes root, wealth begins to follow, quietly, powerfully, and permanently. Chapter 8. The Algorithm of Opportunity. Why do some people always seem to be in the right place at the right time? Why do certain names keep showing up in successful deals, breakthrough ventures, or rare chances that most people never hear about until it's too late? You might call it luck, but luck is just a placeholder for what we don't fully understand. In truth, there is a system, a rhythm, an algorithm, and while it's not written in code, it functions with stunning precision. Opportunity is not random, it's not blind, it follows patterns, and those patterns are only visible to the people who have trained themselves to see them. Let's begin with a simple truth. Opportunity favors motion. Stagnation repels chance. When you're still, silent, or hidden, the world cannot engage with you. Your talent may be extraordinary. Your ideas might be revolutionary. But if no one knows you exist, nothing happens. Wealthy people don't sit and wait. They signal constantly. They write. They speak. They build. They publish. They invest. They position. And each of those actions is a signal, a beacon, a flare in the dark that says, I'm here, I'm moving, I'm available, let's connect. Opportunities don't land on people who are perfect, they land on people who are present. If you're not putting yourself in motion, intellectually, socially, strategically, don't be surprised when nothing lands. Now let's define what an algorithm is. An algorithm is simply a set of instructions or patterns that produce a predictable outcome. When it comes to opportunity, that outcome is visibility, timing, leverage, and scale. So what does the algorithm of opportunity look like? It starts with positioning. Positioning is the art of being in the right place, not by luck, but by design. It's the ability to align yourself with the flows of information, capital, influence, and innovation. It means knowing where the value is moving and placing yourself ahead of the curve, not just geographically, not just in your network, but mentally, emotionally, creatively, digitally. Positioning is about awareness, and awareness is built through intentional curiosity. Ask yourself this: how often are you putting yourself in rooms that stretch your vision? How often are you speaking with people who operate on higher frequencies of clarity, strategy, or courage? How often are you exposed to the next wave of innovation, not after it succeeds, but before? Most people are positioned reactively. They wait for opportunity to come, not but the wealthy. They build the road. They raise the flag. They train the eye to see shifts long before they become mainstream. This is the first rule of the algorithm: get in motion and move toward the edges, because the edge is where new opportunities appear first. Now let's talk about asymmetry. Opportunities are not evenly distributed, and they're not evenly priced. What looks like a small move to one person could change another person's life. What seems insignificant to the untrained eye may be massively undervalued to someone with context. The wealthy are not necessarily smarter. They are just trained to spot asymmetric bets, low downside, high upside decisions, a single connection, a small equity stake, a new platform, a content series, a crypto asset, a real estate development in an emerging city. They place calculated bets, not many, but enough, and they let compounding and timing do the rest. This is the second rule of the algorithm: develop pattern recognition, the ability to recognize when something undervalued today is likely to be overvalued tomorrow. Next, access. You've heard it said your network is your net worth, but that's only true if you're valuable within that network, because access is not about knowing people. It's about being known for something. People open doors for others who bring clarity, talent, leverage, or solutions. If you have no signal, no product, no results, or no usefulness, your network will remain passive. Wealthy people constantly refine their signal. They ask, what do I bring to the table? What problem do I solve? What perception do I create? What trust do I carry? And they protect that access not through arrogance but through consistency. This is the third rule of the algorithm: become magnetic to the right rooms. Let's now talk about momentum. Momentum is the invisible force that separates those who are always catching opportunities from those who are always chasing them. People in motion attract offers, ideas, resources, and collaborators, even if they haven't made it yet, because momentum creates the illusion of inevitability, and humans, including investors, clients, and gatekeepers, want to be aligned with the next thing, not the past. Wealthy people build momentum through consistency. They don't stop because something didn't go viral. They don't quit because a launch didn't sell out. They keep publishing, building, adjusting, growing, and that consistency creates trust. Trust attracts attention. Attention opens doors, and doors lead to scale. The fourth rule: build momentum, then protect it. Momentum is hard to earn, easy to lose, and the engine of modern opportunity. Now perhaps the most subtle and important part of the algorithm: timing. Opportunity is a product of timing, but timing is not about luck. It's about readiness. The wealthy don't just wait for the right moment. They prepare for it. They stay ready. They practice. They invest in themselves before the spotlight arrives. Because when the door finally opens, you won't have time to get ready. You'll have only one option: walk through. That's why they study, they rehearse, they build capacity, They stay sharp, so that when the wave comes, they ride it instead of getting crushed by it. The fifth rule: timing rewards the trained, not the lucky. Let's summarize. The algorithm of opportunity isn't about luck. It's about motion. Start moving before you're ready. Positioning. Put yourself in spaces where value is created, not just consumed. Asymmetry. Look for leveraged bets that scale your input. Access. Be known, and be known for something. Momentum. Stay consistent, even when results are quiet. Timing. Stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. This algorithm is not reserved for elites. It is accessible, but it demands clarity and courage. Because building opportunity is not about waiting for life to deliver you a silver platter. It's about becoming the kind of person who gets invited to the table and then builds one of your own. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be visible to the right people at the right time, with the right story in the right room. And when those elements align, the algorithm clicks, and the game changes. Chapter 9. The Wealth Personality Types. Money isn't just about math, it's about identity. Every financial decision you make, from what you save to how you spend, from how you invest to when you freeze, is shaped not only by your beliefs, but by the role you're playing. You are not just a person managing money, you are a character, operating within a script that was handed to you long before you even understood what money meant. Wealth, then, is not just a technical shift, it's a psychological transformation. It's the conscious rewrite of the role you've been cast in, and until you understand the type of wealth identity you carry, you'll never be able to upgrade it. Let's begin by acknowledging something difficult but true. Most people did not choose their wealth personality. It was shaped for them by parents, by early experiences, by scarcity, by culture, by trauma, and for many, by shame. This identity becomes your default operating system. It filters how you see money, how you trust money, how you grow money, and most importantly, how you keep money. Let's explore some of the core wealth personality types. As you listen, ask yourself which one sounds most like you, which one explains the patterns you keep repeating, and which one would you rather embody. 1. The survivor. This personality is built on fear. Every financial move is reactive. The focus is on preservation, not growth. Money feels like a lifeline, something that must be gripped tightly, not risked. Survivors tend to hoard. They delay joy. They obsess over coupons, sales, and emergency funds. They measure wealth by what is protected, not by what is produced. This mindset often stems from real struggle, poverty, unemployment, crisis. But over time it becomes a prison, because even when money grows, the fear doesn't leave, and fear is a terrible investment advisor. The survivor sees risk as a threat, not a tool. 2. The spender. This type uses money to feel, to validate, to escape, to express. Money is not a tool, it's an emotional anesthetic. Spenders chase the high of purchase, the status of ownership, the identity of luxury, but underneath it all is often a deep sense of lack, a sense that if I just get this next thing, I'll finally feel enough. The problem: the dopamine fades, and the bills remain. Spenders often avoid structure, they resist budgets, they live for now at the cost of later, and without intervention, they often find themselves cycling between moments of abundance and sudden scarcity. 3. The avoider. Avoiders pretend money doesn't exist until it screams. They delay tax returns, they ignore bank statements, they avoid conversations about financial planning, not because they're lazy, but because money triggers shame, guilt, or anxiety. They would rather not know than feel like they're failing. The avoider often comes from chaotic money environments, households where finances were a source of stress, secrecy, or conflict. And so, the adult strategy becomes emotional distance. But that distance creates disempowerment, and disempowerment leads to consequences. Avoiders don't lose money because they're careless. They lose money because they're disconnected. 4. The earn burner. This is the high-functioning overachiever. They generate impressive income, but they spend almost as fast as they earn. Why? Because deep down, they don't believe it will last. They were taught that money disappears, that success is fleeting, so they spend while they can. They'll justify it as reward, as lifestyle, as generosity, but beneath the logic is urgency, a subconscious belief that this won't last, so I might as well enjoy it now. The earn burner lives in a high-stress loop, always chasing the next deal, always trying to outpace the burn rate, and always fearing that one bad month could collapse everything. 5. The accumulator. This personality type does save. They budget, they plan, they follow all the rules. They may even build a sizable portfolio. But there's one problem. They never feel free. They're stuck in analysis, trapped in spreadsheets, obsessed with optimization. Every dollar must be perfectly placed. Every risk must be overanalyzed. They are prisoners of precision. The accumulator is often applauded by society. They look responsible. They sound intelligent. But they often forget that money is meant to be used, not just protected. Their wealth grows, but their life often doesn't. 6. The investor. This is the elevated wealth personality. They see money as a lever. They think in systems, not expenses. They value return on attention, not just return on investment. They are curious, calm, strategic. They understand risk and take it by design. They are builders, not just savers. They don't fear loss because they trust their ability to rebuild. The investor surrounds themselves with other investors, in capital, in knowledge, in relationships. They're always scanning for leverage, for value, for future upside. They're patient. They let time do the heavy lifting. They're not chasing wealth. They're orchestrating it. Now here's the truth most people avoid. You can't change your financial life until you change your financial identity. You can read every money book, follow every budgeting app, take every course, and still revert back to the same patterns, because your self-image hasn't changed. If you see yourself as someone who just isn't good with money, you'll always find a way to prove it. If you believe wealth isn't for people like me, you'll self-sabotage every gain. If you think ambition is selfish, you'll cap your income and call it morality. Your personality around money is not fixed, it's programmable, and the reprogramming begins with self-awareness. Ask yourself now, which personality type do I default to under stress? Which one did I inherit from my upbringing? Which one have I secretly judged, but actually resemble? Which one do I want to evolve into? The goal is not to shame your current identity, it's to see it clearly, so you can upgrade it. Wealth is not built by pretending you're already there. It's built by becoming the kind of person who can handle what you want, and that begins with alignment, not just of action, but of identity. Here's a powerful exercise. Write down your current money personality in one paragraph. Describe your habits, beliefs, fears, and patterns. Then write the paragraph of your future self, the one who already has the financial freedom you want. How do they think? How do they decide? How do they feel about money, time, and value? This is not visualization, it's identity design, and it's the most underused wealth tool available, because when you begin to act like your future self today, you pull the future closer, not with force, but with alignment. Chapter 10. Breaking the cycle of scarcity. Scarcity is not simply the absence of money, it is the presence of fear. It is a system of thought, a way of seeing the world, of interpreting every opportunity, every risk, and every financial decision through the lens of lack. It is not about your bank account, it is about your blueprint, the wiring inside you that keeps repeating the same cycle, regardless of how much you earn. And until you confront that cycle, you will never feel wealthy, even if you technically are, because scarcity is not solved by income, it is solved by identity, by reprogramming the core assumptions you hold about value, effort, and enoughness. Scarcity begins early. For some, it starts in childhood, a household filled with tension, overdue bills, hushed arguments, or unspoken stress. For others, it's cultural, messages embedded in religion, school, or social circles that told you wealth was dangerous, selfish, or corrupt. Sometimes it comes from trauma, sometimes it comes from silence, but regardless of where it comes from, scarcity becomes the software you run, until you deliberately overwrite it. The first symptom of scarcity thinking is fear of loss. Scarcity tells you, if I let go of this money, I might not get it back. So you hoard, you underinvest, you avoid opportunity, you delay decisions, you grip every dollar like it's your last, and in doing so you shut the very door that abundance would walk through. Wealth is not built through hoarding, It is built through flow, through movement, through strategic allocation of resources, not emotional paralysis. The second symptom is comparison. Scarcity doesn't just whisper, "You don't have enough." It screams, "Look at what they have." It pushes you into cycles of envy, status signaling, and emotional spending. Instead of building, you're reacting. Instead of measuring progress, you're measuring proximity to someone else's highlight reel. And that distraction costs you more than money. It costs you momentum. It costs you confidence. It costs you clarity. The wealthy do not measure sideways. They measure forward. They don't ask, "Am I ahead of them?" They ask, "Am I aligned with where I'm going?" Scarcity thrives on distraction. Abundance thrives on direction. Another hallmark of scarcity is urgency without clarity. Scarcity says, "Do something, anything, just don't stay still." So you hustle, you grind, you chase shiny objects, you try every trend, you say yes to everything, and at the end of it all, you feel exhausted and no closer to freedom. This is not productivity, it's panic. Scarcity turns motion into survival, but wealth turns motion into momentum. The wealthy don't just act fast, they act with clarity, and clarity is impossible when your mind is full of noise and fear. Now let's talk about a deeper, more hidden form of scarcity: guilt around wanting more. Many people were raised to believe that wanting wealth is selfish, that ambition is arrogance, that having more than others makes you less moral. So they suppress their desire, they shrink their goals, they apologize for their dreams, and if they do achieve something, they sabotage it, because they feel unworthy of holding it. This guilt is powerful, but it is not virtuous. It is the residue of programming that was designed to keep you small, not because you were unworthy, but because the people around you were afraid. Wealth is not unethical. Ignorance and staying broke to keep others comfortable is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. So how do you break the cycle? The first step is awareness. You cannot escape what you refuse to admit exists. Track your thoughts. Listen to your language. Notice your reactions. When someone else succeeds, do you cheer, or do you flinch? When you're offered opportunity, do you embrace it, or delay? When you earn money, do you celebrate or worry? Your default response to money is your real belief about it, and that belief must be brought into the light. The second step is reframing value. Scarcity tells you that value is limited, that if someone wins, someone else must lose, that resources are fixed, that pie is finite, but this is false. Value is created, ideas are infinite, markets evolve, technology scales, trust multiplies, and attention, when directed properly, becomes capital. Wealthy people don't look at the pie and ask, "Where's my slice?" They ask, "How can I bake a new pie?" Because they know value isn't taken, it's built. The third step is learning to trust flow. Scarcity clutches, abundance circulates. Scarcity says, "Protect what you have." Abundance says, "Build something that gives." This doesn't mean blind generosity. It means strategic contribution. It means investing in things that multiply: knowledge, relationships, assets, infrastructure, systems. It means understanding that money loves movement, and that stagnation leads to decay. When you hold money with fear, it avoids you. When you hold money with wisdom, it finds you. The fourth step is investing in self-worth. Scarcity often comes from the belief, "I am not enough." So even when money shows up, you don't feel safe holding it. You deflect, you downplay, you distract, you leak. Wealth starts inside, and no strategy will work long-term unless it's built on a foundation of identity that says, "I am allowed to be free." You do not need to suffer to be worthy. You do not need to earn pain to earn rest. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. Self-worth is not arrogance, it's clarity, and clarity compounds. Finally, the most powerful shift, moving from scarcity to stewardship. Scarcity hoards, stewardship multiplies. Scarcity panics, stewardship plans. Scarcity fears what might go wrong. Stewardship designs for what will go right. A steward is someone who takes responsibility not just for what they have, but for what they can create. A steward understands that wealth is not about luxury, it's about impact, about legacy, about systems that keep producing value even when you stop pushing. When you see yourself as a steward, your behavior shifts. You become strategic. You become intentional. You think longer. You play wiser. You live better. Let's bring this home. Scarcity is not about dollars. It's about beliefs. And beliefs can be rewritten. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your parents' programming. You are not your lowest financial moment. You are not your fear. You are not your hesitation. You are a system, a structure, a builder, a designer of your future, if you choose to. And that choice begins today, not with more money, but with a new mind. Chapter 11. The Income Illusion. There's a dangerous assumption embedded deep in modern society, a belief so widespread that few ever question it. It sounds like this: if I just make more money, all my problems will go away. It's an idea reinforced by media, culture, and even personal experience. More income feels like the answer. It gives you breathing room. It makes things look better. It creates the illusion of progress. But here's the truth most people learn the hard way. High income is not the same as wealth, and often it's not even close. Because income is not freedom. Income is not leverage. Income is not ownership. Income without strategy is just a prettier version of survival. Let's begin with the basic math. If you earn $10,000 a month, but you spend 11, you are not rich. You are not free. You are in debt. If you earn $20,000 a month, but your lifestyle cost 19, you are one missed paycheck from panic. If you earn $50,000 a month, but your identity depends on keeping up appearances, funding liabilities and feeding the expectations of others, you are not in control. You are trapped by scale. This is the income illusion. It looks like prosperity. It feels like momentum, but underneath it's fragile, exposed, vulnerable, and unless you break the illusion, you will simply build a higher, more stressful version of the same prison you've always lived in. Income without transformation is just noise. It amplifies your habits. It magnifies your patterns. It accelerates whatever you've already been doing, for better or worse. That's why some people make six figures and still feel broke, because the problem was never the paycheck. The problem was the framework. So let's rebuild the framework from the inside out. First, we must understand the difference between active and leveraged income. Active income is money you earn by being present, by showing up, by working, by trading time, energy, or attention for a result. This is how most people earn money: jobs, freelancing, consulting, service-based work. And while there is dignity in all of it, there is also a ceiling, because time is finite, and energy is limited, which means income is capped. Leveraged income, on the other hand, is not bound by presence. It scales, it multiplies, it compounds. It comes from systems, assets, automation, partnerships, investments. It earns while you sleep, rest, think, or travel. The wealthy move from active to leveraged, not because they're lazy, but because they understand math. They understand that if their time is their only source of income, they are always at risk. So the question becomes, how much of your income is dependent on your body, on your presence, on your ability to keep showing up, even when you're exhausted? Second, we need to examine lifestyle inflation, the silent killer of progress. Most people don't have income problems. They have expense problems. The moment their income increases, so do their tastes. They upgrade their car, their clothes, their vacations, their coffee. But what they don't upgrade is their discipline. And without discipline, your money serves your ego, not your freedom. It impresses others. It pleases your inner child. It masks insecurity, but it does not build anything lasting. Wealthy people do not inflate emotionally. They inflate strategically. They buy based on systems, not feelings. They expand when their foundation expands, not just when their bank account swells. Lifestyle inflation is seductive, but what it really does is bury you deeper into the need to keep earning. And that's not freedom, that's dependence in disguise. Third, we must confront the addiction to earning. Some people get hooked on the idea of making more, not because they need it, but because it validates them. They begin to measure self-worth in revenue, in promotions, in applause. They chase bigger numbers without building bigger lives. They forget why they started. They abandon peace in pursuit of performance. and slowly, they become addicted to the chase. This addiction hides behind ambition. It looks like drive, but it often masks emptiness. Wealthy people earn aggressively, yes, but they also pause to ask, what am I building? What does this allow me to create? Where is this leading? They don't chase income for the sake of ego. They channel it into leverage, into legacy, into intentional design. Earning should empower you, not define you. Fourth, we must distinguish between net worth and income flow. Income is a snapshot. It shows movement, but net worth shows stability. It reflects what you own, what you control, and what you could walk away with if all the income stopped. High income with low net worth is like driving a race car on an empty tank. Fast, loud, flashy, but dangerously close to breaking down. The wealthy obsess over net worth, not because of vanity, but because it's a scorecard of ownership, assets, equity, cash flow, debt efficiency, tax position, liquidity. These are the numbers that actually determine whether you're building freedom or just motion. If you're not measuring net worth, you're playing the wrong game. Fifth, understand emotional ROI. High income is worthless if your life feels bankrupt, if you're chronically stressed, if your health is declining, if your relationships are suffering, if you have no time to think, reflect, rest or breathe. Then the money isn't wealth, it's a leash. The wealthy measure more than dollars. They measure peace, simplicity, joy, alignment. They understand that money is only valuable to the degree that it enhances the quality of life, not just the quantity of purchases. This doesn't mean you don't pursue growth. It means you don't sacrifice yourself for optics. So how do you escape the income illusion? You start by redefining wealth. You move from, how much do I earn, to how much do I keep? How much do I control? How much is working for me? How much freedom is this creating? You focus less on the front end, and more on the flow. You track not just paychecks but power, where your money lives, what it's building, what it's buying back. You design income around your life, not your life around your income. Here's the practical shift. Step 1. Audit your income streams. Which are active? Which are leveraged? What percentage of your time is producing 80% of your results? Step 2. Identify your enough number, not to stop growing, but to define sustainability. Clarity around enough is how you avoid emotional inflation. Step 3. Create a leverage plan. What can be automated? What can be delegated? What can be productized, licensed, syndicated, scaled? Step 4. Measure net worth monthly. Even if it's negative, track it, because what you track, you grow, and what you ignore declines. Step 5. Reconnect earning with meaning. What does this money allow me to become? Who does it serve? How does it align with my long game? The goal is not to earn less, it's to earn with intention, because income without meaning is just motion. Let's close with this. The world will celebrate your income, but your freedom will be built in silence, in the structure, in the systems, in the decisions that no one applauds but that quietly separate you from the race. You don't need more income, you need more ownership of your income, more direction, more design, more vision behind the numbers, because when the illusion fades, what remains is what you've actually built. Chapter 12. Leverage is the multiplier. At a certain point, effort reaches its limit, time runs out, energy declines, focus gets stretched. And no matter how disciplined you are, you hit a wall. That wall is not laziness, it's not failure, it's physics. There are only 24 hours in a day. Only so many calls you can take, only so many projects you can oversee. And this is where most people stall. They try to do more, when what they really need is to do differently. They chase output instead of unlocking leverage. Leverage is the great separator. It's the reason some people create exponential results with the same effort that leaves others exhausted. It's the silent multiplier, the engine behind scalable wealth. When people talk about working smarter, not harder, what they're really pointing toward is leverage, not just time management, not just delegation, but true, structural multiplication of effort. If wealth is a building, then leverage is the elevator. It allows you to rise faster, higher, and with less resistance, if you know how to step in. There are 4 primary forms of leverage that shape modern wealth. People, capital, code and content. Each one allows you to do more than you physically can. Each one detaches your income from your hours. Each one creates systems that scale, whether you're present or not. Let's explore them one by one. First, people. This is the most traditional form of leverage, and still one of the most powerful. When you hire someone, you are literally buying time. You are exchanging money for hours you no longer have to spend. You are duplicating effort without duplicating yourself. Wealthy individuals build teams, not because they want to manage people, but because they understand the limitation of solo effort. They hire for outcomes. They build culture. They train with vision. And most importantly, they delegate trust, not just tasks. The average person avoids delegation because of fear. Fear of cost, fear of imperfection, fear of letting go. But the wealthy know, every task you continue doing that someone else could do for less is stealing from your future. You can't scale if you're stuck in the weeds. You need to rise above your calendar, and people, when chosen wisely, are how you do it. Second, capital. Money itself is leverage. When deployed properly, it earns more money, it unlocks scale, it buys speed, it removes friction. The wealthy don't hoard money, they deploy it. Strategically, intentionally, consistently. They understand the value of using dollars to solve problems faster. They invest in tools, talent, partnerships and growth, not recklessly, but with clear expected returns. Capital leverage means letting money work harder than you do. While most people spend money to feel safe, the wealthy spend money to scale. They don't ask how much does this cost, they ask what does this unlock. That shift in question changes everything. Third, code. Software is silent labor. It works 24 hours a day. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't call in sick. It doesn't forget instructions. Whether it's a website, an app, an automation or a digital system, code is leverage that compounds. It takes a single idea and makes it available to thousands, even millions, with no marginal cost per user. The wealthiest companies in the world today, from Google to Shopify to Amazon, are built on code. They don't sell time, they sell systems, replicable, scalable, high-margin systems. Even if you're not a developer, you can use code, from automated email flows to client onboarding, from financial dashboards to marketing platforms. Code allows you to replace human labor with logic, and when logic runs the system, scale becomes inevitable. Fourth, content. This is the most underestimated and the most modern form of leverage. Content is thought that scales. A video, a podcast, a post, a book, an idea crystallized and distributed to the world. Content works while you sleep. It builds reputation. It attracts leads. It filters your audience. It educates. It inspires. And most importantly, it multiplies trust. The wealthiest personal brands in the world don't sell access. They sell insight, and they deliver that insight through content. From Naval Ravikant's tweets to Warren Buffett's shareholder letters, content has become currency. If you're not publishing, you're invisible. And if you're invisible, you're unleveraged. Now here's where most people get stuck. They try to use all forms of leverage at once. They spread thin, they burn out, they get discouraged. The secret isn't to use everything immediately. It's to start where you are and layer up. Build one engine, refine it, let it run, then stack another. Sustainable leverage is sequential. It builds step by step, brick by brick, until it compounds into systems that run without you. That's the goal, to build systems that run when you rest, to build assets that grow when you pause, to build income that continues when you travel, heal or reflect. But there's a catch. Leverage requires trust. Trust in people, trust in systems, trust in process, and most importantly, trust in yourself. You must trust that you are worth more than just your output, that you can lead, not just perform, that you can scale, not just grind, that you can let go and still move forward. Leverage requires identity expansion. You must stop seeing yourself as a worker and start seeing yourself as an architect. You must stop valuing control and start valuing outcomes. You must rise above the task list and into the strategy. Here are 5 questions to help you begin applying leverage right now. What am I doing weekly that someone else could do for 25% of my rate? What tools, automations, or platforms could replace 10 hours of labor this month? What piece of content could I create once that would answer 1,000 questions passively? What investments in skills, people, or assets could return freedom, not just cash? Where am I still trading time for money, and what would it take to break that loop? These are not casual questions. They are multipliers. And when answered with honesty and action, they change the structure of your life. Not overnight, but permanently. Let's close with this. Leverage is not reserved for billionaires. It's not reserved for tech founders or hedge fund managers. It's available to anyone willing to think beyond effort, beyond repetition, beyond scarcity. You don't need to work harder. You need to build smarter. You don't need to scale stress. You need to scale structure. Because once leverage enters your life, freedom is no longer a dream. It becomes inevitable. Chapter 13. Your network is an asset class. There's an old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And like most old sayings, it contains a truth, but not the whole truth. The full version should be this: it's who knows you, who trusts you, and what they know you for. Because in wealth building, relationships are not just social capital. They are structural capital. Your network is not a nice to have. It's not just about being liked or well connected. It's a financial engine, a pipeline of information, opportunity, trust, positioning, and scale. Handled correctly, your network becomes a self-renewing asset class, one that compounds faster than most investments. But to activate that compounding effect, you must stop treating relationships like transactions and start treating them like infrastructure. Let's begin with a hard truth. Most people are not under-earning because of talent. They are under-earning because they are underseen. They are not in the rooms where value flows. They are not in the conversations where decisions are made. They are not known by the people who can unlock leverage. And this is not a flaw in their ability. It's a flaw in their visibility. You don't rise by hiding. You rise by showing up, strategically, consistently, and authentically. Wealth is not just about what you produce. It's about who is willing to multiply what you produce. And that's where your network comes in. So how do you build a network that acts like an asset? It starts with this: stop networking, start contributing. Most people approach networking with a scarcity mindset. They ask, what can I get? How can I pitch? What can I ask for? But wealthy networkers flip the script. They begin with generosity. They contribute insight. They offer help. They add signal to noise. They don't seek attention. They create value, and that value draws the right people closer, because value is magnetic. The first rule of treating your network as an asset: invest before you extract. Second, engineer collisions. High-value relationships rarely happen by accident. They are designed. They are positioned. They are placed on the calendar, in the room, at the table, on purpose. The wealthy understand this. They don't wait to be invited. They create opportunities for interaction. They host dinners. They join masterminds. They collaborate on content. They build products together. They follow up with intention. They schedule with purpose. They don't collect contacts. They curate alignment. Third, signal clarity. Your network is not just based on likability. It's based on identity clarity. What are you known for? What can people send you opportunities for? What does your name stand for? People trust those who are easy to understand. If you're vague, they forget you. If you're inconsistent, they avoid you. But if you are specific, consistent, and visible, they remember. And when the right opportunity arises, they think of you first. This is not branding. It's positioning. It's how the world routes value toward you without you chasing it. Fourth, build in public. One of the most overlooked leverage points in networking is visibility through creation. When you write, speak, post, share, you're not just expressing yourself. You're giving people a reason to trust you. Every post builds familiarity. Every idea builds expertise. Every project builds credibility. Wealthy networkers don't hide their work. They publish it. They share process, not just outcomes. They document, not to impress, but to invite. The more visible your value, the faster your network grows, because your name begins to circulate even in rooms you haven't entered yet. Fifth, invest in relationship infrastructure. This means keeping track of people, not just in your head, but in your systems. CRM tools, spreadsheets, Airtable, Notion, whatever method you prefer, use it. Track conversations, set follow-ups, send birthday notes, check in after a launch, celebrate others' wins. Be the person who remembers. Most people lose relationships not because of conflict, but because of neglect. Wealthy people don't forget. They follow up. They stay top of mind, not by force but by care. The network that compounds is the one that is maintained. Sixth, build bridges, not ladders. There's a difference between climbing and connecting. If your goal is just to reach people above you, your network becomes a game of performance. But if you build bridges, across industries, across skill levels, across stages, you create ecosystems. And ecosystems are much harder to disrupt. Be the person who connects others, who makes introductions, who sees potential in cross-pollination, who understands that sometimes being the connector is more powerful than being the center. Wealthy networks are not vertical, they're distributed, and that makes them anti-fragile. Seventh, understand the compound effect. Relationships are not linear. They don't pay off instantly. They grow in silence, until one day they explode into value. That one conversation becomes a partnership. That one dinner leads to a deal. That one DM becomes a lifelong client. That one tweet turns into a six-figure opportunity. But only if you stayed consistent. Only if you kept showing up. Only if you kept watering the soil. Your network is a long game. Play it that way. Let's be honest, most people don't build networks. They accumulate names. They hoard business cards. They stack LinkedIn connections. But none of it matters unless there is trust. And trust takes intentional effort. It takes curiosity. It takes vulnerability. It takes presence. You can't fake it, but you can build it deliberately, authentically, and generously. And when you do, your network becomes something no recession, no algorithm, no policy change can take away, because it lives in people, not in platforms. Let's close with a framework you can apply today. 1. Inventory. Who are the 10 most valuable relationships you've neglected? What would happen if you re-engaged them? 2. Clarify. What are you known for right now? If someone had to describe your value in one sentence, could they? 3. Contribute. Where can you offer value today without expecting anything in return? 4. Create. What content can you share that educates, inspires, or aligns you with your vision? 5. Connect. Who could you introduce this week, simply because they should know each other? Apply this weekly, and your network will not just grow, it will compound into deals, into leverage, into access, into freedom. Because at the highest level of wealth, people are not competing, they're collaborating, they're building in alignment, and they're moving faster, because they're not moving alone. Chapter 14. Money is a mirror. Money doesn't lie. It reflects. It shows you, clearly, brutally, and without apology, what you believe, what you prioritize, and what you fear. People think money is neutral, but it isn't. Money is reactive. It responds to energy, to decisions, to confidence, to avoidance. It's not a fixed object. It's a mirror. One that reflects your inner architecture back at you, in numbers and choices and emotional reactions. Most people think they have money problems, but in truth, they have identity problems, expressed through money. And until those inner fractures are faced, no amount of income will ever feel like enough. Let's begin with this. Your relationship with money is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. If you believe you are not worthy of ease, you will unconsciously block opportunities that make life easier. If you believe you must suffer to succeed, you will choose the hardest path, even when smarter options are available. If you carry shame around success, you will sabotage it when it comes close. If you equate love with struggle, you will recreate that emotional loop in your finances. This isn't theory, this is pattern. Observed, repeated, and reinforced across generations, industries, and lives. Money is not emotional, but you are, and your emotions shape the decisions that shape your money. Let's break this down into the most common reflections money shows us, and how to decode them. First, scarcity. shows up as fear. If your financial life feels small, fragile, always on the edge, look for the internal narrative that says, there's never enough. That story often begins early. You may have heard it from your parents, seen it in your environment, absorbed it through constant vigilance, and now, as an adult, that story still drives your decisions. You stay in jobs too long, you undercharge, you overthink investments, you delay upgrades, you stockpile cash but never grow it. You cling to control and call it responsibility. But under it all is fear. Fear of loss, fear of risk, fear of judgment, fear of having and then losing. And until that fear is addressed, not just managed but healed, no spreadsheet will make you feel safe. Second, overconsumption reflects self-worth confusion. If you find yourself always needing the next thing, if you spend impulsively, if your closet is full but your heart is still restless, money is showing you that your value system is external. It's tied to how others see you, to how you escape boredom or pain, to how you momentarily feel important or validated. This is not a spending problem, it's a self-concept problem. When you don't feel enough on the inside, you try to buy the feeling of enough from the outside. But money can't fix what identity hasn't healed. Third, under-earning reflects hidden guilt or shame. If you're highly capable, intelligent, hard-working, driven, but your income stays low, you're not just facing external blocks. You're likely running an internal conflict. That conflict might say, if I charge more, I'll lose people. If I grow too much, they'll judge me. If I succeed, I'll outshine someone I love. If I get rich, I'll become greedy or unlovable. These subconscious beliefs sabotage action. They keep you invisible. They keep you humble. They keep you small and praised for it. But safety is not success, and you cannot build wealth while apologizing for your potential. Fourth, avoidance reflects trauma. If you avoid looking at your finances, ignore debt, refuse to open statements, or procrastinate decisions, money is showing you where there's emotional pain, unresolved, unprocessed, and unspoken. You may have witnessed financial trauma growing up, bankruptcy, divorce, instability, manipulation, and now, as an adult, your nervous system reacts to money like a threat. So you avoid it, and the more you avoid it, the more disempowered you become, and the cycle continues. The issue isn't knowledge, it's nervous system regulation. Until you feel safe around money, you won't engage with it powerfully. Fifth, control issues around money reflect trust wounds. If you obsess over every penny, micromanage your partner's spending, fear delegation, or struggle to invest, money is showing you your trust story. You may have learned that you can't rely on others, that abundance disappears when you relax, that you must do everything yourself, or it all falls apart. That story, while understandable, becomes a ceiling, because wealth requires release, delegation, partnership, leverage, and leverage only works if you let go. Control creates stagnation, and stagnation kills scale. So what's the solution? It's not just tactics, it's integration, the merging of identity and strategy, the healing of self-perception, so that financial structure becomes sustainable, because you can't out-earn your identity, you can't outperform your emotional baseline, and you cannot hold what you're not ready to receive. Money will only stay in your life to the extent that you feel worthy of having it, and safe holding it. This brings us to a deeper truth. You are not broken. Your system is outdated. You're running code that kept you safe when you were younger, code that helped you survive chaos, code that protected you in scarcity, code that made you acceptable in the environments you were raised in. But that code was never meant to run your empire. It was meant to protect a child, not guide a leader, not grow a portfolio, not negotiate seven-figure deals, not scale a business, not raise capital, not raise your standards. You're not broken, you're outdated, and updates are possible. Start with this. Ask yourself what money has mirrored back to you. What patterns keep repeating? What numbers reflect your self-view? What situations keep cycling? What emotions come up when you talk about wealth? What is money trying to tell you about your beliefs, your values, your fears, because once you stop judging the mirror and start reading it, everything changes. You stop reacting, you start rewriting, you stop avoiding, you start owning. And ownership, true, identity-rooted ownership, is where real wealth begins. Here's a practice to begin today. Write a letter to money, not from your head, from your heart. Treat it like a person. Tell it the truth, what you've learned, what you've feared, how you've misused it, what you now want to rebuild. Then write a response, from money to you. Yes, it sounds strange, but in doing this you create separation from shame. You create clarity, you create forgiveness, and most importantly, you begin to redefine the relationship. Because money isn't a god, and it isn't a villain, it's a mirror, and mirrors reflect who you believe you are. Let's close here. When your identity aligns with trust, when your nervous system aligns with stability, when your self-worth aligns with receiving, money responds, it flows, it expands, it stays. It compounds, not because you tricked the system, but because you finally became the person who can hold what you asked for. Chapter 15. The Code of Risk Tolerance. The word risk has been weaponized. For most people, it means danger, instability, a threat to comfort or safety. But for the wealthy, risk means something very different. It means leverage. It means upside. It means movement. It means opportunity waiting on the other side of discomfort. Risk is not the enemy. Misunderstood risk is. Because the problem isn't risk itself. It's how you see it, how you measure it, how you respond to it, and how much control you believe you have over it. Let's start by defining risk, not emotionally, but strategically. Risk is simply uncertainty with consequence. It's any choice with an unknown outcome and the potential to affect your future. Buying a house, launching a product, quitting a job, hiring a team, asking for the raise, investing in an idea. Every one of these involves risk, but so does not doing any of them. That's the paradox most people never face. Avoiding risk does not eliminate danger. It simply shifts the danger into the future, where the consequences are often worse. There is risk in growth, and there is risk in stagnation. The question isn't how do I avoid risk, it's which risks move me toward freedom, and which ones keep me stuck. Now let's address the core illusion. Most people overestimate the risk of action, and underestimate the risk of inaction. They fear the risk of starting a business, but ignore the risk of depending on one employer for all their income. They fear investing $10,000, but ignore the cost of letting inflation eat their cash year after year. They fear being judged for putting themselves out there, but ignore the cost of being invisible to the people who could change their life. This is not logic, this is fear wearing the mask of wisdom. And wealthy people take off the mask. They see clearly, they weigh upside and downside. Not emotionally but mathematically. They ask, what's the real cost if this fails? What's the potential if it works? Can I survive the downside? Can I replicate the upside? That's how risk tolerance is built, not by recklessness, but by awareness. Let's break it into parts. 1. Personal risk profile. Every person has a different baseline of tolerance, and that's okay. Risk tolerance isn't about being fearless. It's about understanding your capacity and stretching it with intention. Where are you naturally cautious? Where are you impulsive? Where do you freeze? Where do you leap? Knowing your risk pattern helps you design around it. It helps you create checks and balances. It helps you choose business models, asset classes, and partnerships that align with your wiring. Don't copy someone else's risk style. Calibrate your own. 2. Risk asymmetry. Wealth is built through asymmetric risk. Small downside, massive upside. This is what venture capitalists do. This is what entrepreneurs do. This is what strategic investors do. They're not risking everything. They're risking a controlled portion in exchange for something that could change the game. If you risk $5,000 on a project that might return $50,000, that's asymmetry. If you risk 10 hours on a connection that could lead to a six-figure deal, that's asymmetry. If you take one meeting, send one proposal, make one hire, post one idea, and it unlocks a new timeline, that is how wealth moves. Train yourself to look for asymmetry. It's everywhere if you stop demanding guarantees. 3. Risk stacking versus risk isolation. Most people think in terms of all or nothing. That's not how the wealthy operate. They don't stack multiple uncalculated risks on top of each other. They isolate risk. They mitigate. They create buffers. They pilot before scaling. You don't quit your job and drain your savings and max your cards. You transition. You test. You build runway. You earn proof. Risk stacking leads to chaos. Risk isolation leads to momentum. 4. Emotional resilience. Risk isn't just about money, it's about how you handle uncertainty. If your identity crumbles every time something doesn't work, if one rejection makes you doubt your value, if one dip makes you abandon the plan, you're not lacking strategy, you're lacking emotional resilience. Wealthy people feel fear, but they don't obey it. They practice emotional regulation. They normalize volatility. They don't attach personal worth to every result. They build internal safety so they can take external risks. 5. Risk versus regret. Here's a question that recalibrates everything. Will I regret not doing this more than I might regret doing it? Most regrets are not about failure. They're about inaction, about not speaking up, not showing up, not trying, not betting on yourself. 4. Wealthy people ask that question early, and often, they understand that the pain of trying and failing is temporary, but the pain of wondering forever, that's expensive. Build your life to minimize regret, not just risk. 6. Time horizon thinking. Risk feels scarier when you think in days. It softens when you zoom out to years. Most people overestimate the impact of short-term losses and underestimate the power of long-term consistency. A $20,000 mistake today might feel huge, but over a 10-year arc, it's a tuition payment. A failed launch this quarter feels like the end, but in a 3-year plan, it's just data. Time reframes risk. It turns drama into lessons, loss into leverage, detours into design. Now, let's talk about how to increase your risk tolerance safely, intentionally and intelligently. You don't do it all at once. You build capacity, like muscles, like cardio, like emotional strength. Try small uncomfortable things. Have the conversation, post the idea, raise your rates, make the offer, invest a small amount, say no where you usually say yes. Each of these is a rep, a micro risk, a signal to your nervous system. I can stretch, and I'm still safe. The more you practice, the more your tolerance grows, not because the risk disappears, but because your identity expands. Here's a framework to apply. Step 1. Identify the decision. What's the action you're avoiding right now? Step 2. Define the downside. What's the real worst-case scenario, not the imagined one? Step 3. Create the floor. What's the backup plan? The fail-safe, the exit ramp. Step 4. Calculate the upside. What could go right if this works? Step 5. Commit in range. Don't go all in. Don't stay stuck. Commit to a controlled version. And this process turns risk into strategy, and strategy creates confidence. Confidence compounds, and over time, it turns calculated risk into consistent results. Let's land here. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be clear. Clear on what matters. Clear on what's real. Clear on what it costs to play it safe forever. Risk is not your enemy. Staying small is. Confusing comfort with security is. Calling fear logic is. Wealth is not handed to the bravest. It's built by those who learned how to choose discomfort with intention. And when you do that, you stop reacting to risk. You start designing with it. Chapter 16. The one skill all millionaires master. If you study every self-made millionaire, regardless of industry, background or starting point, one pattern will always emerge. One skill consistently separates those who struggle from those who scale. It's not coding, it's not investing, it's not even leadership. The one universal wealth skill is communication. Not talking, not speaking, just to speak, but communicating with precision, clarity, confidence, and intent. In business, wealth flows to those who know how to move people with words. Whether you're closing deals, raising capital, creating content, pitching investors, coaching clients, writing sales pages, managing teams, or negotiating partnerships. Every financial door opens through communication. Words are not just tools. They are levers, and when used properly, they are scalable income engines. Let's break down why this matters so much, and how to master it for yourself. First, understand this. The ability to articulate value is the gatekeeper to wealth. It doesn't matter how good your product is. It doesn't matter how deep your knowledge runs. It doesn't matter how much experience you've accumulated. If you cannot clearly explain why it matters to the person who needs it most, you will lose. You will be overlooked, underpaid, underestimated, misunderstood. Wealth doesn't go to the loudest. It goes to the clearest, to the ones who can position themselves as solvers of specific problems. Second, people don't buy information. They buy transformation. They don't pay for hours, they pay for outcomes. They don't want features, they want feelings. And it is your job, if you want to build real wealth, to connect the dots for them. What is the before state? What is the after state? And how does what you offer create that shift? If you cannot answer that in one sentence, your offer is not ready, and neither is your income. Wealthy people don't sell tasks, they sell results. And results require clarity, both in delivery and in communication. Third, confidence is communication's secret multiplier. You can say the right words, but if your voice shakes, your posture slouches, your tone hesitates, or your message hides, no one will trust you. Why? Because people don't buy words. They buy energy. They buy congruence. They buy certainty. You don't need to be loud, but you do need to be aligned. Your body, your voice, your message, they must match, because people feel the disconnect before they hear the content. That's why personal development is professional development. That's why nervous system work is sales training. That's why identity and income rise together. Fourth, storytelling is strategy. If facts sell, stories scale, because stories bypass resistance. They speak to emotion. They lower the shield of skepticism. They create connection. The most successful entrepreneurs, coaches, authors, and investors don't just present facts. They tell stories that shape belief. The origin story, the client journey, the case study, the failure that taught the lesson, the breakthrough that changed it all. These are not fluff. They are frameworks. A good story doesn't just entertain, it moves money. Fifth, copywriting is a high-income skill, even if you don't write for a living. Copywriting isn't about clever phrases. It's about communicating in a way that gets people to act. That email, that landing page, that proposal, that tweet, that video title, that caption, that text message, all of it matters. All of it either pulls people closer or pushes them away. Learn how to write in a way that triggers action, urgency, curiosity, desire, trust, not by manipulating, but by clarifying. If you can write words that move people, you will never be poor. Sixth, listening is 50% of communication and 80% of influence. The best communicators aren't just good speakers, they are elite listeners. They pay attention to what's not said. They hear tone shifts. They observe micro-expressions. They remember details. They ask the right questions. And because they listen deeply, they speak precisely. They don't pitch blind. They solve accurately. They tailor offers. They build instant trust. Influence is not about talking more. It's about understanding better. Seventh, your words create your identity and reinforce your future. What you say about yourself becomes your self-concept. What you say to others becomes your reputation. What you say daily becomes your reality. If you constantly say, "I'm not good at sales," "I hate marketing," "I can't explain what I do," "I'm bad with money," you are programming your future to reflect your past. Wealthy people speak with intention. They speak possibility. They speak in alignment with their next level, not just their current comfort. Words are not just descriptions. They are instructions. Now let's make this practical. Here are 5 ways to immediately improve your communication and grow your income. Clarity before cleverness. Strip jargon, use simple words. One idea per sentence. If a 10-year-old can't understand it, rewrite it. Frame with outcomes. Always lead with the result you help people achieve. Start with the after, then explain the how. Use social proof and stories. Nothing builds trust faster than a real example. Turn your wins into narratives people can see themselves inside. Speak to emotion, then justify with logic. Humans buy with heart and justify with head. Start with the why, end with the how. Practice out loud. Don't just write. Speak. Record yourself. Watch playback. Refine tone. Improve pacing. Build presence. This is training, and every rep compounds. The better you communicate, the faster people trust you. The faster they trust you, the more they buy. The more they buy, the faster your wealth engine spins. Here's the truth. There are people less skilled than you, less experienced than you, less educated than you, making 10x more. Why? Because they communicate clearly, they sell with confidence, they position with power, they explain with precision. Wealth flows not just to those who know, but to those who can translate that knowing into belief. You don't need to become a public speaker, but you must become a powerful messenger. Because money follows clarity, money follows certainty, money follows words that move people. Let's end with a challenge. For the next 7 days, track every moment where communication affects your income. Every call, every post, every pitch, every message, every sale, every answer. Ask, did I express value clearly? Did I connect with emotion? Did I match the energy I wanted them to feel? Did I move them closer? Awareness is the first wealth multiplier, and mastery begins with repetition. Chapter 17. Wealth has a frequency. Most people think wealth is just numbers, but real wealth is vibration before it is calculation, energy before execution, identity before strategy. You can master the market, the tactics, the funnels, the real estate, the branding, and still find yourself blocked, stuck, or sabotaging. Why? Because your external world cannot rise above your internal signal. Wealth is not something you chase, it's something you tune into. It has a frequency and you either match it or you distort it. And when you learn to calibrate that frequency intentionally, everything accelerates. Let's start with this idea. Everything is energy. This isn't philosophy, it's physics. Atoms, matter, movement, all vibrate. Every person emits a signal, and so does every thought, belief, word, and decision. Money too is energy. It is not just currency, it is current. It flows where there is alignment, clarity, openness, and direction. It avoids contraction, confusion, and fear. So if your life feels blocked financially, the first question is not, what do I do? It's what am I broadcasting? Because wealth is not seduced by need, it is drawn to certainty. Let's talk about what it actually means to match the frequency of wealth. It begins with state, not just mindset but embodied state. This is the nervous system, this is presence, this is how you breathe, how you stand, how you speak, how you feel. People who live at the frequency of wealth move differently. They are grounded, they make decisions quickly, they don't over-explain, they don't beg, they don't panic. Why? Because they trust themselves, and that trust becomes a signal. Clients feel it, opportunities recognize it, markets respond to it. Wealthy energy is not loud, it's clear, and clarity is magnetic. The frequency of wealth is not about luxury, it's about neutrality. There is no grasping, no proving, no chasing, only grounded confidence. It says, I know who I am, I know what I offer, I know what I'm here to build. And because there is no inner noise, outer results arrive with less effort. This is not about skipping hard work, it's about not making it harder than it needs to be. Now let's identify what distorts your wealth frequency. Every time you people please, every time you shrink, every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you fear judgment, every time you perform instead of express, you jam the signal, you confuse your environment, you attract uncertainty, you repel clean outcomes, because money flows through clean lines, and distortion leads to delay. The clearer your boundaries, the faster your breakthroughs. Let's talk about receiving. Many people are great at working, at grinding, at solving, at striving, but they are terrible at receiving. They can't hold praise, they deflect compliments, they downplay their work, they undercharge, they apologize for their success, they feel guilt around ease, and so the universe, the market, the clients, they mirror that energy back. They say, oh, you're not ready to hold more. Got it. We'll pause here. Receiving is a skill. It is not passive. It is active alignment with worthiness. And worthiness is not something you earn. It's something you remember. Now let's look at language. Because your words shape your frequency. What are the phrases you repeat daily? I can't afford that. That's too expensive. I'm so broke right now. Who would pay me that much? I'll never make that kind of money. These are not just expressions. They are spells. And your life becomes the echo of those incantations. Wealthy frequency speaks differently. It sounds like, how can I afford that? What value would justify this rate? Money flows to me because I trust myself. I invest in what reflects my next level. Words are not just reflections. They are tuners. Choose carefully. Now let's address fear. Fear is the static on your frequency. It muffles desire. It amplifies doubt. It creates friction between what you want and what you're willing to receive. Most fear, though, is not real. It is borrowed from your past, from your culture, from your family, from your failures. You inherited it, you rehearsed it, and now you're radiating it. But fear loses power when named, when faced, when felt, and moved through. You do not need to eliminate fear. You only need to stop obeying it. Let's talk about alignment. Alignment means your thoughts, feelings, words and actions are in agreement. No contradiction, no crosswire, no confusion. When you say you want to be rich, but secretly believe wealth is greedy, or fear losing friends, or expect people to resent you, you are not aligned. And misalignment creates delay. It confuses your signal. It scatters your results. Wealth is fast when alignment is clean. It slows down when your inner world sends mixed messages. So how do you raise your frequency? Not by pretending, not by chanting affirmations you don't believe, not by faking confidence, but by choosing truth over and over until it becomes your baseline. This means saying no without guilt, raising your prices, holding your posture, saying what you mean, sharing your truth, making offers, resting without shame, investing in yourself, setting boundaries, letting things be easy. These are not soft skills, they are signal upgrades. Here's a daily calibration practice. Each morning, ask, what would the wealthiest version of me do today? Then, what would they not do? What would they say yes to? What would they walk away from? How would they speak? How would they respond to uncertainty? How would they move through this room, this call, this decision? This is not about pretending, it's about rehearsing a higher identity. And when practiced long enough, that identity becomes real, because the frequency you hold eventually becomes the future you live. Let's close with this truth. Money is not chasing you. You are remembering how to match it. You are letting go of distortion, of shame, of guilt, of apology. You are becoming quiet enough to hear your own signal, clear enough to speak your truth, open enough to receive, aligned enough to scale. Wealth is not a destination, it's a vibration, and you're already closer than you think. Chapter 18. The math that rich people actually use. Most people think money is just about earning more, but the wealthy don't think in income. They think in capital. They don't track paychecks. They track systems. And the math they use, the kind that builds generational wealth, isn't taught in schools. It's not about how hard you work. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how you structure the flow of money and how you measure what really matters. Because until you stop thinking like a worker and start thinking like an owner, your income will always require your effort. Let's begin with the foundational shift. Income is not wealth. Capital is. You can earn $500,000 a year and still live paycheck to paycheck. You can earn $50,000 a year and become a millionaire in 20 years. The difference is not the size of the income, but the structure of how money is used. Wealthy people don't just earn, They allocate. They create systems that turn active income into growing, multiplying capital. Capital is money that works harder than you do. Capital is money that earns while you sleep. Capital is money that doesn't need your time, just your direction. This is not about saving more, it's about learning the math that actually moves the needle. Here's the first number rich people focus on: cash flow. Not salary, not gross revenue, but net, monthly recurring cash flow. If you make $20,000 in a month, but $19,800 goes out just to survive, you are not free. If you make $6,000 but you only need $3,000 to live, and the rest builds assets, you are on your way to real wealth. Cash flow is your financial oxygen. It tells you how far you can stretch, how long you can invest, how much leverage you can safely apply. Wealthy people measure cash flow like a surgeon measures vitals. The second number they focus on is runway. How many months could you live at your current lifestyle without earning a dollar? If the answer is 1, you are in survival. If the answer is 6, you are breathing. If the answer is 24, you have room to build. Runway creates power. It creates space. It lets you take risks others can't. It lets you walk away from bad deals, bad clients, bad energy. Wealthy people protect their runway because it protects their decision-making. Third, return on attention. Yes, attention, not just investment capital, but mental bandwidth. Where do you spend your energy? Where does your mind go every day? What decisions drain you? What people distract you? What projects pull you into low leverage? Return on attention means you only focus on what multiplies. If you spend 80% of your energy on things that never scale, you're not building wealth. You're just staying busy. Wealthy people remove noise, because noise steals compound clarity. Fourth, net worth versus liquidity. You'll hear a lot about being a millionaire, but what matters more than assets on paper is what you can access. If your net worth is $5 million but it's all tied in real estate you can't touch, you might be rich on paper and still feel broke. If your liquidity, cash and cash equivalents, is low, you will live in fear of disruption. Wealthy people balance both. They grow long-term assets while maintaining short-term agility. You want paper wealth and accessible capital, because fluidity is power. Cash flow buys time, liquidity buys options. Assets build legacy. Fifth, multiplication rate. How fast does $1 become 2? How fast does one idea become 10 clients? How fast does 1 hour of work become a year of recurring value? This is multiplication, the real metric of wealth. The average person trades hours for dollars. The wealthy trade ideas for systems. And systems create multiplication. One email that gets 1,000 opens. One product that sells again and again. One investment that compounds over 10 years. One relationship that leads to 5 new introductions. Wealth grows through intelligent multiplication, not manual effort. Sixth, leverage ratio. There are 4 types of leverage: people, capital, code, content. Wealthy people use all of them. They delegate, they invest, they automate, they create once and distribute forever. They ask, how can I do this once and get paid for it 10 times? How can this system run without me? How can I earn while I learn, or sleep or travel? They don't just work in their business, they work on their systems of scale. Seventh, freedom metric. What does it actually cost to fund the life you want fully? Not just the bills, but the experiences, the family support, the causes, the health, the legacy. Most people don't know this number, so they chase more, without direction. Wealthy people know their freedom number. They reverse engineer their income to hit it. They measure success not by vanity but by autonomy. Your life doesn't need to be expensive, it needs to be designed. So how do you start thinking like the wealthy? Not by copying their lifestyle, but by learning their math. Start tracking net monthly cash flow, runway in months, time spent in high leverage tasks, liquid capital available, time to value for new ideas, multiplication points, bottlenecks to automation, decision fatigue sources. If you can measure it, you can multiply it, and if you multiply it, you create wealth. This is not overwhelming, it's clarifying. And here's the truth. You don't need to master all financial tools. You need to master your financial picture. You don't need to be an accountant. You need to become your own CFO. Look at your life like a portfolio. What is underperforming? What is over-leveraged? What is waiting to be optimized? This is what wealthy people do, consistently. They observe, adjust, and optimize. Not react, not guess, not hope. Because wealth is not an accident. It's a formula. Let's close with a reminder. Money grows in clarity. It shrinks in confusion. And the math that wealthy people use is not hidden. It's just not taught. But you are learning it now. And that knowledge, when applied, will change everything. Chapter 19. The loop that keeps you broke. You can learn every strategy. You can read every book. You can listen to every podcast, take every course, and follow every guru, and still find yourself looping in the same financial patterns year after year. You get ahead, then fall back. You save, then something unexpected wipes it out. You build momentum, but sabotage the success before it stabilizes. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're incapable. It's because you're still running the loop. A subconscious pattern, a hidden script, an internal thermostat that keeps pulling you back to what feels familiar, even if familiar equals broke. Let's start here. You will never permanently earn beyond your identity. You may temporarily spike, you may receive windfalls, you may get lucky breaks. But unless your identity matches that new level of wealth, you will unconsciously find ways to return to your old financial baseline. You'll overspend. You'll undercharge, you'll procrastinate, you'll lose focus, you'll give up power, you'll delay what's urgent. This isn't just mindset, this is self-concept, and your self-concept is the silent architect of your financial destiny. Your identity loop is the sum of these parts. What you believe you deserve, what you were modeled as normal, what you associate with safety, what you associate with guilt, what you expect to lose if you rise. Each of these lives in your subconscious, built from childhood, trauma, society, culture, and repetition. And unless you rewrite the loop, it will always win, no matter how hard you try. Let's look deeper. Part 1. Deservedness. If you were raised hearing that money is hard to get, that rich people are selfish, that wealth is for those people, that you have to suffer for every dollar, that you're not the kind of person who gets ahead, then your nervous system equates wealth with danger, and you will resist it, not consciously, but subtly, daily, repeatedly. You'll reject opportunities, you'll delay action, you'll create chaos before the breakthrough, all to prove the old belief true: I'm not meant for more. Wealthy people challenge that belief directly. They rewire deserve into design. Part 2. Modeling. You don't become what you're told, you become what you see. If you watched your parents struggle, if you witnessed panic around bills, if you saw fights about money, or if success was punished with jealousy, then your subconscious labeled wealth as something to avoid, not logically but emotionally. So now, you might build, but never hold. You might dream but never execute. You might earn but always feel unsafe. You are not broken, you are repeating a model. And models can be rebuilt. Part 3. Safety. This is the most powerful part. Your brain does not care about wealth. It cares about familiarity. It cares about survival. If being broke is familiar, if financial chaos is your baseline, if hustle and lack and drama are what you know, then that becomes safe, and anything different, even better, feels threatening. So when things finally feel good, you pick a fight, you quit early, you pivot too soon, you self-sabotage. Not because you hate success, but because success feels unsafe. Part 4. Guilt and loyalty. You may carry hidden guilt for having more than your parents, more than your siblings, more than your partner, more than your friends. And guilt creates contraction. You start to dim, you downplay wins, you under-earn to fit in, you sabotage to stay loved. You are not just fighting poverty, you are protecting relationships, subconsciously, silently. And until you name this, you won't allow yourself to rise. Part 5. Fear of loss. Sometimes the fear is not what if I fail, it's what if I succeed, and it changes everything. What if I lose friends? What if I outgrow my circle? What if I become a target? What if people expect more from me? What if success exposes my flaws? So instead of risking the pain of loss, you stay small, because staying stuck feels safer than being seen. This is the loop, and it's not broken with more strategy. It's broken with identity work. Let's shift now to how that happens. Step 1. Awareness. You cannot escape a loop you won't admit. Track your patterns. Where do you always pull back? When do you stop showing up? What triggers your avoidance? Who are you trying not to outshine? Write them down. Name them. Expose them. Shame cannot survive exposure, and identity cannot evolve without awareness. Say it out loud. This is my pattern, and I'm choosing a new one. Step 2. Redefine normal. Whatever you normalize, you reinforce. If debt is normal, you'll recreate it. If chaos is normal, you'll attract it. If struggle is normal, you'll defend it. You must consciously define new normal. Peace is normal. Overflow is normal. 5-figure months are normal. Abundant friendships are normal. Abundant friendships are normal. Ease and impact are normal. Say it, write it, live it. Not someday, now. You rise into the reality you practice believing. Step 3. Identity affirmation. Don't affirm outcomes. Affirm identity. I am someone who holds money well. I am a person who is safe to be seen. I am not afraid of being too big. I can rise and still stay connected to love. I am no longer loyal to limitation. You are reprogramming the loop, not with hype, but with truth repeated until it replaces fear. It will feel awkward. Say it anyway. Step 4. Practice receiving. If the loop taught you to deflect, to minimize, to reject compliments, to say it was nothing, to undercharge, then your work is to receive fully. When someone thanks you, take it. When money arrives, breathe it in. When a compliment lands, let it stay. You are building capacity to hold more, and the universe responds to that capacity. What you hold with grace grows. Step 5. Hold the upgrade. Once things start to shift, do not run. Your loop will try to pull you back, to drama, to old habits, to procrastination, to familiar low-level energy. Expect it, then interrupt it. Pause, breathe, remember who you're becoming. Choose again, move forward. This is how loops break, not with force, but with consistent refusal to return. And each time you do, the new pattern becomes the new normal. Let's close here. The loop isn't you, it's a story you inherited, a rhythm you repeated, a pattern you practiced. But patterns can be broken, stories can be rewritten, loops can be replaced with freedom. Wealth is not just for those born lucky, it's for those brave enough to face the loop and choose a new level anyway. You are ready, because you're aware, and awareness is the first crack in the cycle. Chapter 20. The code is you. There is no secret formula. There is no one perfect strategy. There is no ultimate mentor, course, or investment that will hand you your financial destiny. Not because they don't help, they can, but because the real code of wealth was never external. It has always been you, your patterns, your beliefs, your identity, your alignment, your willingness to evolve, your courage to act. You are the variable, you are the multiplier, you are the architect. And once you own that, you are no longer chasing wealth, you are activating it. Let's return one final time to the core idea. Wealth is not something you earn. It is something you become. It is not a destination to arrive at. It is a rhythm to embody, a frequency to calibrate, a system to design, and most of all, a decision you recommit to daily. This decision is not loud. It does not require motivation or pressure. It requires honesty, clarity, ownership, and consistency. Every result you desire begins as a moment of quiet decision, repeated until reality catches up. Let's revisit what you've built through this book. You've learned how money is a mirror, a reflection of identity, belief, and behavior. You've seen how speed, clarity, and decisiveness magnetize results. You've studied how systems create scale, how pricing reflects self-worth, how communication multiplies income. You've unpacked the energy behind money, how shame, guilt, and fear distort your frequency, how identity loops keep you stuck, and how wealth begins with alignment, not effort alone. You've begun to see money differently, not as an external reward, but as an internal reflection. And once that lens changes, so does everything. Now let's ask the final question. What does it mean to live as the code? It means you stop outsourcing your power. You stop waiting for permission. You stop trying to prove your value. You stop shrinking to stay liked. You stop apologizing for your ambition. It means you realize your vision is valid. Your pace is divine. Your voice is powerful. Your desires are instructions. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly on time, because you are choosing now to lead. To lead your thoughts, to lead your energy, to lead your finances, to lead your future. Living as the code means you anchor into these truths. I do not chase wealth. I generate it. I do not prove worth. I embody it. I do not hustle for crumbs. I create systems that scale. I do not fear growth. I invite it. I do not wait to be chosen. I choose myself. I do not ask for less. I calibrate to more. And I do not forget who I am, no matter what the bank account says today, because my worth is not negotiable, and my future is inevitable. This is the real code. So what happens now? Now you begin again, but with new eyes. The circumstances may look the same, but you are different. You no longer ask, can I do this? You ask, what's the clearest next step? You no longer think in problems. You think in patterns, leverage, and alignment. You no longer wait for confidence. You act into it. You no longer seek escape from discomfort. You breathe through it, because you trust where you're going. You become the person who moves toward wealth, not just someday, but daily. That identity shift, not a tactic, but a truth, is the foundation of every financial breakthrough to come. Let's talk about legacy. Because once wealth becomes your rhythm, the conversation changes. You stop asking, how do I make more? You start asking, what am I building this for? You look at your children, your community, your lineage, your causes, your mission. You ask, what systems do I leave behind? What impact do I encode into this world? Because the wealthiest people don't just earn, they design continuity. They build what outlives them. They embed freedom into the future. And that begins with how you live, right now. Let's take a breath together. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not stuck. You are awakening. You are remembering. You are reclaiming the code. You are not waiting for the right economy. You are becoming the economy. You are not defined by past numbers. You are defined by present alignment. And you are ready, right now, to lead a different story. A story where money doesn't own you, where time expands to meet your vision, where every dollar becomes a seed, not a chain, A story where your name means something powerful, where your presence creates opportunity, where your decisions echo forward for generations. That is the story you're writing now, with every new belief, with every clean choice, with every quiet act of alignment. So take the code and live it, not perfectly, not urgently, but authentically. Let it guide how you show up, how you build, how you speak, how you price, how you partner, how you receive. Let it be your anchor, your compass, your lens, your rhythm, because when you embody the code, you don't just make more money, you become the kind of person who naturally holds it, grows it, and uses it well. Not to prove anything, but to express everything. So one last time, the hidden code of wealth was never hidden at all. It was in your identity, in your decision, in your alignment, in your willingness to remember who you are. You are the system, you are the strategy, you are the signal, you are the source, and now, you are the code.